that we are going to move to a second round of questionings of the panel, I'm going to yield to the ranking member for a brief moment to voice an objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do object, and I will be more explicit with my objection with the 5 minutes that I will consume in the second round. But I do object and would ask that we not have another round of this.
And duly noted, and it is in the prerogative of the chair to go to a second round. So the chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes. I want to go to a few points of clarification. Again, who authorized the payment? That question has been asked for numerous times. Mr. Ahern, I think you indicated that at least Mr. Liu was involved in knowledge of this agreement, correct?
So I think it's unsurprising that with a transaction of this nature that it would involve discussions involving
Mr. Backelmeyer,
officials.
Was Mr. Kerry apprised of this?
Sir, Secretary Kerry has been deeply involved in all of our discussions with Iran. This has been subject to a vigorous debate within our interagency.
And the President was aware of this as well?
In the Cabinet of the United States?
I'm going through some quick cleanup. President was aware of as well of this deal? Absolutely correct?
President was aware.
Highest levels. Okay. When these deals in the tribunal are resolved, there's a settlement agreement that is put out. A settlement agreement in regard to this deal has not been released. Is a settlement agreement forthcoming?
I believe I could answer that question, Congressman. Typically what happens at the tribunal, if there is a settlement, and this would have been applied to U.S. national settlements as well as government settlements, they are affirmed as an award on agreed terms, and they would be attached.
Is there a settlement agreement forthcoming?
The parties in this situation, because there are pending claims at the tribunal, the parties asked the tribunal not to record it as an award.
There's been pending claims at the tribunal for 37 years, and a settlement agreement has been released.
Yes.
I would expect that a settlement agreement, so the American people can see what the deal truly was, should be forthcoming, and it's of concern to this committee that it has not been released and appears by your testimony
yes,
is not forthcoming.
There are claims continuing. In fact, today my office is filing a submission in the FMS claims with the Iran-U.S. Claims Tribunal. So and there is a lot of concern about the fact that those claims are ongoing, and we do not want to undermine any U.S. positions.
And Iran knows of this deal. It's just that we, the American people, want to know about it as well, and I'm sure if you share it with us, you don't undermine your negotiating position with Iran, because they were part of it. In regard to the $400 million, I think you all indicated there was a claim by the victims of Iranian terror lien on that $400 million. You all agree to that? Has that lien been released now that that $400 million has been paid?
The statute really doesn't provide for a lien, so I'm not sure what you're really talking about.
So we heard there's a claim to the money. Mr. Mulvaney read that to you, and you agreed that there was a claim or a lien, however you want to phrase it, per statute on the money.
It was subrogated to the United States government. That's correct.
So now that $400 million has been released to Iran, who's going to pay the claims to the victims of Iranian terror?
The victims of Iranian terrorism who had those judgments were already paid in 2000.
So there's no outstanding claims?
There are outstanding claims.
So who's going to pay those outstanding claims?
Those individuals have pursued litigation in U.S. courts. They've received judgments, and as far as I'm aware, they are pursuing attachments.
So is the U.S. government going to be responsible for those claims?
They are the claims of the U.S. nationals, and they do not become the claims of the U.S. government unless they're subrogated or unless the U.S. government formally exercises diplomatic protection.
I want to go quickly here. As part of the Iran nuclear deal, assets were unfrozen, or thawed, if you will. As part of that deal, were any of those assets transferred or converted into cash and also transferred back to Iran?
Congressman, the sanctions relief in the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was quite different. You are correct that the sanctions were lifted that had previously restricted those funds, and those sanctions were lifted, and Iran then it was up to Iran to access those funds.
And were they able to access those funds in cash?
At that point, once those sanctions restrictions were lifted, it would be up between them and whatever bank they had their funds in.
So are you aware? Did they get large transfers of hard currency back to Iran that you're aware of?
I'm not aware of how Iran has ultimately, or how any funds were ultimately dispersed to Iran. What we know is
were any dispersed to Iran? So they got 1.7 billion in cash. Did they get any other cash payments by way of us on freezing their assets?
Well, Congressman, it's worth
Yes or
remembering
no?
that these were...
Yes or no? I'm limited time. Yes or no? Did they get more cash?
These were Iranian funds in Iranian accounts overseas.
I know that.
And
So
they
did-
used those funds to buy and trade and do things like that.
So is it
they-
fair to say they got more cash shipments in with hard currency because we unfroze their assets? Yes, right?
No, I'm not sure that it is. I don't know how Iran would have sought the disposition of its assets overseas.
One last question. This deal that you say is so great was a determination from the tribunal imminent? So I was a prior prosecutor. Before the jury comes back, the jury's about to come in or the judge is about to rule, the parties settle. Was the judge about to rule? Was there an imminent settlement of this deal that was pending that made you have to act and settle for $1.7 billion?
As I mentioned in my opening, Iran was pressing very hard to go to hearings.
That's not my question. I didn't ask you.
November of nine-
I didn't ask you if they're pressing you. I asked you if a settlement or a determination by the tribunal was imminent. Not whether they're pressing you. They've probably been pressing for 37 years.
At that
Was there a
point in time,
determination
it was
imminent?
our judgment that there was a possibility of a judgment coming very soon.
So the hearings had been had. All the evidence was with the tribunal, and they're about to make a decision. Is that your testimony?
My testimony is that Iran was pressing for a preliminary determination about this issue regarding the disposition of the trust fund and interest.
So there
And
was no
It was our
evidence.
determination that it was much better to have a decision made to resolve this for a much smaller amount than what we thought the tribunal could have rendered.
There was no imminent determination on the horizon. My time has expired, and I will now recognize the